Welcome to another episode of Automotive Insiders. I'm your host, Jason Stein. Great to have you back listening again on this platform. This November 19th at the MEMA OE Suppliers Annual Conference in Detroit, a new study will be released that's already being described as a landmark for U.S. manufacturing competitiveness. Developed in partnership with MEMA by Arthur D. Little, the report captures the voices of C-level executives, OEMs, Tier 1 suppliers, and industry leaders at a time of extraordinary transformation. From the transition to EVs to macroeconomic and geopolitical pressures to the challenges of labor, supply chains, and industrial policy, the study zeroes in on the most critical question. Where are the solvable barriers and how can U.S. manufacturing position itself for the future? To break it down today, I'm joined by two of the study's lead authors, Jörn, partner and head of Automotive and Manufacturing Americas at Arthur D. Little, and Frank McCleary, partner at Arthur D. Little. Together, they'll share what makes this research so unique, what challenges suppliers must prepare for, and why the U.S. market remains such a crucial hub for the global industry. That conversation begins now on Automotive Insiders. Jörn, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
And Frank, it is a pleasure to also have you here.
Thank you for having us.
So we're going to talk a lot about the MEMA OE Suppliers Annual Conference, the study that will be released there on November 19th. And it is a landmark for U.S. manufacturing competitiveness. Jörn, why and how?
Well, over the last few years, I think we've seen that the industry is in a transformational environment. Both clearly the challenges from transitions to EVs that we clearly see still happening, but also macroeconomic aspects, geopolitical aspects, clearly driving the industry into a very transformative environment. And in those times, it becomes very, very critical that we're going to really look at the situation. And therefore, a landmark look to see, okay, what do we want to do in the future? What is the right setup for the future? And that really defines that landmark aspect.
And Jörn, just to stay with you for a second, the industry survey includes C-level executives, in-depth interviews, OEMs, Tier 1s. But I know that the focus of it is solvable barriers.
Yes.
Where are the solvable barriers?
I don't want to preempt the study results, but I will definitely tell you that we have aspects around industrial policies where both industry leaders as well as political decision makers should work hand in glove to figure out the way for the future. There are clearly other aspects around supply chain challenges, critical supplies, system critical supplies from an independent standpoint for the US market that needs to be looked at. We have clearly also aspects around labor. The availability of skilled labor will be one part of the topic, and quite a few others to really cover what drives the decision makers, especially the suppliers right now in making or not making their decisions, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we've seen. And that's why we look at both OEMs, these are the main customers, the suppliers as well across all the different tiers, and adjacent players that also support this industry to really get that red line of thought, as well as maybe some unique aspects, because not every supplier is the same. So we're trying to bring this together in the study.
So I want to ask Frank about some of those themes, but Jörn, just why, you mentioned the U.S. market, why is the U.S. market such a critical focus for suppliers?
Well, it is still, and it will be for quite a long time, one of the biggest industrial hubs for manufacturing of vehicles and others. It's still one of the biggest markets in the world. Clearly, China has been overtaking the US, but we are still one of the biggest consumers besides the European market. India is coming up very strongly. So that's not going to go away. And so people that want to purchase vehicles, that want to purchase service parts and components to repair the vehicles, they need to look at a supply chain that they can rely on and also look at where those things are manufactured. And that's really why we think the US deserves a very critical look and deserves a look into where do we want to be in the future? Do we want to go back to the US in the 1940s and 50s where the US was an export country for manufactured goods for vehicles, and we've lost that over time. Or what is the new normal basically for the future? Where do we want to be and need to be?
And Frank, what are the key themes or challenges that have emerged from your research?
Yeah, so one of the consistent things is workforce readiness and availability. The general labor pool, blue collar line operators varies by commodity type, but consistently across the board, technical skills have been highlighted regardless of whether it's an OEM, a supplier, across all tiers. Maintenance technicians, tradesmen, and tradeswomen. But also when we start talking about automation and bringing in more automation to compete with labor productivity and labor output out of Mexico or out of China, and how do we further automate where we can automate, and that's been a consistent issue that all across the entire supply chain have continued to highlight. And I think that's going to continue because the demand for software development, the demand for technology development is going to continue across all industries. So it's how does the automotive sector become, create a USP around the topic where they can attract that right level of talent. I think the other thing that's becoming apparent is the approach that the industry takes. We've seen a lot where companies, one company after another, are doing the same thing with regards to, again, talent recruitment, talent enablement. And I think there's the ability for the industry to play better together in the sandbox, and there are some nice examples that we'll highlight in the study. But how do we bring that industry together at the state level predominantly to work together to support that and make industry or make manufacturing attractive career, not just a job but a career over the long term.
And Frank, how can suppliers use the research to really get ready for the future, to prepare for the future?
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier. It's what are those solvable things that they can attract or they can attack today? It's been said multiple times, those no regret moves. But I think we've seen a lot of the industry that becomes stuck in the challenges of tariffs and regulatory changes, or changes in demand forecasts, and those are all real problems. But really looking at what they can solve today. They're still going to need new workforce. They're still going to need more workforce. They're going to need to make themselves more attractive than they were in the past, because the labor market is going to become more competitive. It's not going to become less competitive. And so really, what are those solvable problems that they can attack today? Resilience in the supply chain. We've seen this consistently as through COVID, through Fukushima before then, and these challenges that come through the market and significantly disrupt the supply chains. So what are those no regret moves that you can already put in place to really drive that resilience in the supply chain that we have suffered through in disruptions over the past 10-15 years, and it's going to just continue.
Jörn, question back for you. What do you hope industry leaders will take away from the study when it's presented at the MEMA annual conference?
I think there are a couple of key themes. Number one is we can't solve this problem alone. The transformation and the challenges in the industry are too big to say, like, look, we as an individual or you as an individual supplier, I can solve all these things. Yes, as Frank mentioned, there are clear no regret moves, things that you should put in place. But if you really want to make this a win-win situation for everybody, as we will have to go through this transformation, there needs to be some collaboration in some shape or form, which, of course, for the US sometimes is a challenge. Other countries have that easier. There is a more common thinking. We're clearly much more of a competitive environment than in other countries. But the question here is it the need for another, call it Manhattan Project, another moonshot initiative, something along the line to really reset the industry? And I think that's another part of, like, we do need to think bigger. We need to come together with policymakers, with all the players in the supply chain to make those changes. That all being said, I think a strong recognition is also there will be areas where bringing it back to the US or forcing it in some shape or form is not really helpful. There's just the nature of the beast of how we've been evolving. The demands that we have from the suppliers is evolving, and there's certain critical items that cannot really substantially be made in the US anymore in a cost-effective way. And we have to recognize those items too. It does not mean that we give these things up. That's, I think, where we need to look at a clear structure for USMCA or the future of it, because other countries in the region do the same thing. We have Europe that works with the Eastern blocs and further, Southeast Asia as well, together with the Chinese environment. So we shouldn't be left behind there, and keep in mind an open mind that says, here's the US, this is what we want to do, and here is our close partners, including our strategic partners that we can rely on.
And Frank, I think a final word to you. In a way, this is a roadmap, right? It's a roadmap for innovation, for strategy, for transformation.
Yeah, and that's where, we need to, the US needs to define, where is the USP that they can drive value, significant outweighed value. And we see that in certain sectors. There was a big push in the semiconductor space. There was a big push in battery, and trying to bring that manufacturing into the US and pull some of that technology out of Asia. And so it's really, if we look broadly across the entire automotive sector, where are those wins that we need to, control, as Jörn was addressing, and really drive that and have a holistic approach versus, this evolving, situation that we have where policy changes over 2, 3, 4 years, and we're continuously, going back and forth. And the automotive industry, while there's China speed, the automotive industry in the US and Europe as well needs to accelerate. They're still not there. And so they can't adapt, and they haven't been able to adapt to these changes and swings from one direction to the next. And so this is where having a holistic approach and a concrete roadmap that enables us to really highlight and focus on the things where US workforce and labor can be competitive and really drive value. And then where are there things that just, they're not, from a national security perspective, they're not super critical. From a labor perspective, we're just not going to be competitive, and where we can innovate further and faster. And that's really the key that we want to highlight as we sort of wrap the bow around the study.
A landmark study on U.S. manufacturing competitiveness. The study will be released at the MEMA OE Suppliers Annual Conference November 19th in Detroit. Jörn, Frank, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to Automotive Insiders this week, and thanks to my guests, Jörn Buss and Frank McCleary of Arthur D. Little. Come back again on this platform for more great insights and interesting executive interviews. I'm your host of Automotive Insiders, Jason Stein. We'll see you back again next time.